Hi, I'm Dakota Johnson from 50 Shades of Grey.
And I'm Jamie Dornan from 50 Shades of Grey.
They looked like the perfect match. On screen, Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson transformed into Christian Grey and Anastasia Steele, the magnetic duo that drove one of the most controversial film franchises of the 2010s. Audiences believed their bond wasn't just scripted, it felt too real, too intimate to be confined to the screen. Talk shows replayed their laughter, magazines splashed their smiles across glossy covers, and interviews painted them as inseparable collaborators. But behind the curtain of 50 Shades of Grey, whispers told a different story. Jamie's awkward body language during press tours, Dakota's carefully phrased compliments, and the occasional eye roll captured by fan cameras hinted that the chemistry was not as effortless as Hollywood wanted us to believe. In fact, each public appearance seemed carefully orchestrated, designed to sell tickets rather than showcase a genuine friendship. Still, the illusion worked. Millions of fans bought into the idea of Jamie and Dakota as not only co-stars, but as close confidants navigating fame together. And yet cracks in the facade kept surfacing, forcing one uncomfortable question to linger. Was this connection ever truly real, or was it nothing more than a Hollywood act? The origins of Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson's so-called friendship trace back to a single franchise, 50 Shades of Grey. In 2013, when Universal Pictures scrambled to replace Charlie Hunnam, who abruptly exited the lead role, the studio turned to Jamie Dornan, a relatively unknown Irish actor with a background in modeling. Dakota Johnson, already confirmed as Anastasia Steele, suddenly had her new co-star. The casting made headlines in The Hollywood Reporter on October 12, 2013, announcing, "Dornan steps into the gray suit." From that moment, the studio's marketing machine set out to craft not only a blockbuster, but also a believable bond between its leads. Red carpets, joint interviews, and glossy magazine spreads became less about promoting a film and more about selling intimacy. When 50 Shades of Grey premiered in February 2015, Dakota and Jamie appeared on the cover of Vogue UK, styled in complementary outfits, their bodies angled just close enough to spark curiosity. The subtext was clear. These two weren't just co-workers. They were Hollywood's newest best friends. The illusion intensified through carefully choreographed talk show appearances. On the Ellen DeGeneres show in 2015, Dakota laughed when asked about their chemistry, quipping, "Jamie's like family to me." Jamie, sitting beside her, added, "We trust each other completely." Lines like these, repeated across press, tours, hardened into what audiences accepted as truth. Universal's publicity strategy leaned heavily on this narrative. Coordinated styling on red carpets, Jamie in a classic tailored suit, Dakota in sleek gowns that echoed his palette, was no accident. Publicists arranged photo calls where they posed with hands gently brushing, enough to spark viral GIFs on Twitter. Even late-night interviews played into the story, framing them as a duo so close that they could finish each other's sentences. The franchise's sequels only deepened the manufactured narrative. In 2017, as 50 Shades Darker hit theaters, Entertainment Tonight ran a feature titled Inside Jamie and Dakota's Unbreakable Bond, accompanied by clips of them joking on set. The same year, People magazine quoted Dakota saying, "We laugh a lot, which makes all of this easier." These sound bites were presented as candid, yet they fit neatly into the studio's PR template. By 2018, with the release of 50 Shades, Freed, the final chapter, the idea of their friendship had calcified into Hollywood lore. Photographs from the Paris premiere showed them locked arm in arm, smiling under flashes, as if bidding farewell not only to a franchise, but to an era of shared intimacy. For the casual viewer, the message was unmistakable. Jamie and Dakota had survived the storm together, cementing a rare and enviable friendship. Yet the orchestration was undeniable. Nearly every candid moment appeared in controlled spaces, photo calls, press junkets, or magazine shoots, each curated by teams of stylists, publicists, and photographers. Even the joint interviews followed a rhythm. Dakota would deflect questions with humor, Jamie would provide a safe, respectful answer, and the cycle repeated. This wasn't the messy, spontaneous dynamic of true best friends. It was performance. Hollywood had perfected this formula long before. Think of Jennifer Lawrence and Bradley Cooper during their Silver Linings Playbook run, or Kristen Stewart and Robert Pattinson during Twilight. Pairings were crafted. Chemistry was spotlighted, and any hint of personal closeness was magnified. Jamie and Dakota simply became the latest chapter in this long tradition of manufactured intimacy. The strategy worked. 50 Shades of Grey grossed over $569 million worldwide in 2015, according to Box Office Mojo, in no small part because audiences believed they were watching a love story that bled off the screen. Marketing analysts even noted that Universal's campaign leaned less on reviews and more on the palpable connection between its stars. Still behind the perfectly timed smiles and rehearsed banter, a quiet tension simmered. Fans noticed inconsistencies, the stiffness of Jamie's posture, the guarded tone of Dakota's compliments. But in the public eye, those doubts were drowned out by the spectacle. The illusion had hardened into truth. The cracks in the carefully crafted illusion did not appear overnight. They emerged slowly, in subtle gestures, hesitant remarks, and moments when the mask slipped just long enough for audiences to notice. What began as whispers on fan forums evolved into a visible pattern of tension, suggesting that the best friends narrative had limits. The first signs came during the 50 Shades of Grey press tour in early 2015. While Dakota often carried the interviews with wit and charm, Jamie's body language told a different story. In a widely shared clip from an Australian morning show that February, Jamie sat stiffly, his hands clenched, while Dakota laughed at the host's jokes. Viewers noticed the contrast. She appeared comfortable, while he looked eager for the segment to end. On Twitter, fans questioned, "Why does Jamie always look so awkward next to Dakota?" The speculation sparked the hashtag #AwkwardGray. Money and power only added fuel. Reports surfaced that Dakota was earning higher praise and higher visibility from critics and fashion houses. In March 2015, The Guardian praised her as the undeniable force of the film, while Jamie was described as wooden. By the time 50 Shades Darker was in production, blogs like Screen Rant suggested that Dakota's star was outpacing Jamie's, hinting at a pay imbalance. Though Universal never confirmed salary figures, Variety estimated in 2017 that Dakota's renegotiated contract positioned her closer to Jamie's reported $250,000 to $500,000 per film, a sharp increase from her initial paycheck. These whispers of financial disparity added to the perception of imbalance in their dynamic. Patterns of absence soon became just as telling as their appearances together. At the 2016 Met Gala, Dakota attended in a dazzling Gucci gown, alone. Jamie, who had been a fixture beside her on previous red carpets, was absent, citing personal commitments. The next year, as 50 Shades Darker launched, eagle-eyed fans noted that during certain press stops, including the Madrid premiere, the two arrived separately and posed together only briefly before being whisked away by handlers. Photos revealed a physical distance that contrasted sharply with their earlier closely linked poses. Social media added another layer of intrigue. Despite living in an era where co-stars frequently tagged each other to amplify visibility, Jamie and Dakota maintained a striking silence. On Instagram, Dakota rarely mentioned Jamie, even as she promoted the films. Jamie, who had once shared behind-the-scenes snapshots, gradually stopped referencing her at all. By 2017, fans were openly debating on Reddit threads with titles like, "Why don't Jamie and Dakota interact outside promos?" The absence became a pattern too consistent to ignore. Even during their joint appearances, subtle frictions bubbled to the surface. In a 2017 YouTube junket clip for 50 Shades Darker, Jamie joked about Dakota's improvisation during intimate scenes. Dakota responded with an exaggerated eye roll, biting her lip before quickly smiling. Fans replayed the clip endlessly, interpreting it as a glimpse of genuine irritation. Entertainment blogs picked it up, with Cosmopolitan running a February 2017 headline, "Did Dakota Johnson just shade Jamie Dornan on camera?" Beyond personal chemistry, differences in work style seem to contribute to the rift. Dakota, raised in a Hollywood dynasty, often leaned into preparation and artistic control. She admitted in a 2018 Elle profile that she likes to understand every detail before stepping onto set. Jamie, in contrast, confessed on The Graham Norton Show that same year that he preferred spontaneity. "I'm not one to rehearse endlessly. I like to feel it in the moment." These clashing approaches may have made the long, grueling promotional tours, months of repeating sound bites, especially taxing. As the final film approached, the contrast became harder to disguise. At the Paris premiere of 50 Shades Freed, in February 2018, photographers noted the difference in body language compared to earlier events. While Dakota leaned into the spectacle, posing with confidence, Jamie's posture seemed more restrained, his arm placed lightly rather than firmly. Around her, Getty Images captured the moment, sparking side-by-side comparisons across social media that highlighted the shift over the trilogy's 3 premieres. By the end of the franchise, the narrative of effortless camaraderie was fraying. Fans no longer dismissed the awkwardness as nerves or fatigue. The inconsistencies had become a recognizable pattern. The stiffness in interviews, the lack of social media support, the solo appearances, the subtle digs during press tours. Each detail added weight to the suspicion that their off-screen bond was less about friendship and more about survival in a demanding Hollywood machine. The cracks were no longer rumors. For years, Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson deflected rumors of tension with carefully polished sound bites. But as the franchise drew to its close, the curtain slipped. The illusion of an unshakable friendship could no longer hold against the weight of candid remarks, awkward interviews, and mounting media scrutiny. The turning point arrived in 2017, during the promotional cycle for 50 Shades Darker. In an interview with The Telegraph published February 2017, Jamie bluntly stated, "Dakota and I are not best friends. We're good partners, we respect each other, but we don't hang out all the time." The remark contradicted years of PR-friendly narratives. While it seemed innocuous, the honesty landed like a crack in the armor. Headlines quickly reframed the quote into something harsher, with E! News running the title, "Jamie Dornan admits he's not close friends with Dakota Johnson." Dakota herself added fuel. Later that year, while speaking with LA Magazine in August 2017, she explained, "We've been through a lot together. It's a very intense experience. But outside of this, we live very different lives." Her tone suggested respect rather than warmth. Fans interpreted the words as a diplomatic way of saying the friendship was overstated. By 2018, as 50 Shades Freed prepared for release, the press cycle took on a sharper edge. During a February junket interview in Los Angeles, a reporter asked about their legendary chemistry. Dakota laughed before clarifying, "We've had to build a lot of trust, but chemistry? That's a movie term." The clip went viral, garnering over 2 million views on YouTube within a week. Comment sections filled with debates. Was she dismissing their connection as purely professional? Meanwhile, Jamie offered a statement on The Graham Norton Show that same month, telling the audience, "We'll always share this crazy thing we did together. But it's not real life, it's work." The phrasing, "not real life," echoed through entertainment outlets. Vanity Fair picked it up under the headline, "Jamie Dornan draws line between 50 Shades and reality." The effect was clear. Whatever bond existed on set was not meant to be mistaken for friendship outside it. Social media amplified the divide. Fans created hashtags, as Team Dakota and Team Jamie, arguing over who carried the trilogy. Johnson's defenders pointed to her critically acclaimed performance in Luca Guadagnino's Suspiria later that year, calling her the true breakout. Jamie's supporters highlighted his steady transition into prestige drama, particularly A Private War, 2018. On Twitter, the once unified fandom splintered into camps, each insisting their favorite had carried the trilogy, while the other merely coasted. Mainstream media seized on the drama. The Hollywood Reporter published a March 2018 feature asking, "Can on-screen passion survive off-screen distance?" Critics noted the irony. A franchise that sold itself on its stars' connection now relied on headlines about their disconnect. The contrast became part of the publicity. Some speculated this tension, far from hurting the films, actually prolonged their relevance, giving audiences something new to debate after the shock value of the first installment had faded. The most telling moment, however, came at the Paris premiere of 50 Shades Freed. In photographs that quickly circulated, Dakota leaned in for a final series of promotional shots, while Jamie's body language remained careful, almost detached. Blogs like Cosmopolitan ran side-by-side comparisons of their premieres from 2015 to 2018, noting the visible cooling of their rapport. For a franchise built on heat, the chill was unmistakable. In hindsight, the cracks were inevitable. The franchise demanded 3 consecutive years of global press tours, intimate scenes dissected by the media, and endless speculation about their personal lives. No friendship, real or manufactured, could withstand that level of scrutiny unscathed. But what made the fallout so striking was the contrast between illusion and reality. The public had been sold a story of trust, laughter, and intimacy. The stars themselves revealed something far less glamorous: professionalism, fatigue, and boundaries. When the dust settled, the narrative of Jamie and Dakota as Hollywood's golden duo was shattered. The mask had cracked, not in whispers or speculation, but in plain sight, through their own words, their own gestures, their own confessions. The mask shattered in public. The public unmasking of Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson's friendship did not end with awkward interviews. It carried consequences for their reputations, for the 50 Shades franchise, and for the way Hollywood manages its carefully scripted narratives. For Dakota, the aftermath brought both freedom and pressure. Free from the shadow of Anastasia Steele, she sought roles that emphasized her artistic credibility. In 2018, she headlined Luca Guadagnino's Suspiria, a bold horror remake that premiered at the Venice Film Festival. Critics at Variety praised her fearless commitment, contrasting it directly with her restrained performance in 50 Shades. By 2021, her turn in The Lost Daughter earned her critical acclaim, with The New Yorker noting how Johnson had shed the franchise skin to emerge as a serious actress. These roles positioned her as more than a former ingenue. They marked her as a survivor of Hollywood typecasting. Jamie's path was equally telling. While some fans feared he would be forever tied to Christian Grey, he actively pursued projects that distanced him from the franchise. In 2018, he starred in A Private War alongside Rosamund Pike, a film praised for its gritty realism. 3 years later, his role in Kenneth Branagh's Belfast, 2021, brought him into Oscar conversation, with the film winning the Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay. Critics celebrated his understated performance, proving that the stiffness, once mocked in 50 Shades, could be recast as subtlety in the right context. Yet the fallout was not just individual, it was collective. The 50 Shades franchise, which grossed over $1.3 billion worldwide across 3 films, per Box Office Mojo, ended without talk of revival or spin-offs. Unlike Twilight or Hunger Games, which flirted with prequels and extended universes, 50 Shades closed the curtain definitively. The lack of off-screen camaraderie between its stars may not have killed the franchise, but it certainly robbed it of the kind of nostalgic afterlife other series enjoy. Media analysts were quick to dissect the silence. In a 2019 Vulture think piece, the question was posed, who benefits from Hollywood's best friend myth? The article argued that the Jamie-Dakota dynamic revealed the fragility of such narratives. Audiences initially buy into the chemistry, but the eventual unraveling becomes just as marketable. In essence, the friendship, real or not, was commodified twice, once to sell tickets, and once more to sell headlines about its demise. The contrast in their public responses also became part of the story. Dakota remained composed, rarely speaking negatively about Jamie, instead framing their relationship as one of trust and professionalism. In a 2019 interview with Vanity Fair, she reflected, "Jamie and I had a very unique experience. We went through something extraordinary together. That will always be ours." Jamie, however, leaned into humor. On the Ellen DeGeneres show in 2020, he joked, "There are worse things than being known as Christian Grey, I suppose." The lightheartedness played as a defense mechanism, but it underscored their divergent strategies. Dakota dignified, Jamie disarming. For the fans, the absence of visible warmth became almost a character in itself. Meme accounts circulated collages comparing their stiff final premieres to the playful early ones, labeling them from lovers to colleagues. Fan forums debated whether their distance ruined the films or made them more fascinating. Strangely, the lack of resolution became its own narrative. By the early 2020s, both actors had moved on, but the shadow of their fake friendship lingered. Anytime Dakota appeared on a talk show, questions about Jamie resurfaced. Anytime Jamie was profiled in a magazine, journalists inevitably referenced 50 Shades. The franchise remained their shared legacy, but so too did the public's skepticism about their bond. The friendship that once sold billions had dissolved into absence. And in Hollywood, absence has a way of becoming a presence of its own, an invisible character that hovers, reminding everyone of what was promised and what was never delivered. The absence became a character. The saga of Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson left behind more than 3 films and a box office windfall. It became a case study in how Hollywood manufactures intimacy and how audiences are learning to dissect the seams of those narratives. Their friendship may not have been real in the way it was sold, but its legacy lies in the questions it forced fans and media to confront. For Hollywood, the Jamie-Dakota pairing exemplified a tried-and-true strategy. Package co-stars as confidants, present their bond as unshakable, and watch the illusion translate into profit. Publicists know that audiences are drawn not only to characters, but to the idea that those characters reflect real relationships. This was the same formula deployed with Kristen Stewart and Robert Pattinson during Twilight in the late 2000s, or with Jennifer Lawrence and Josh Hutcherson in The Hunger Games. Off-screen camaraderie becomes an extension of the narrative being sold, blurring the line between fiction and reality. But Jamie and Dakota's story also highlighted the limits of this model. Unlike Stewart and Pattinson, who briefly dated, or Lawrence and Hutcherson, who leaned into public displays of playful friendship, Dornan and Johnson resisted the myth. Their restrained interactions, their carefully worded interviews, and their eventual admissions of distance all worked against the Hollywood machine. By doing so, they inadvertently revealed how constructed the machine truly was. Audiences noticed. By the late 2010s, media literacy among fans had grown sharper. Social media gave viewers the tools to compare interviews, analyze body language, and circulate memes pointing out inconsistencies. A 2019 BuzzFeed News article noted how fans have become their own detectives, debunking Hollywood illusions in real time. Jamie and Dakota became one of the most visible examples. Their supposed closeness dissected, reinterpreted, and ultimately dismissed by the very people it was meant to convince. The irony, of course, is that the exposure of their fake friendship did not harm their careers. If anything, it added to their intrigue. Dakota's evolution into a critically acclaimed actress and Jamie's pivot into prestige drama suggest that the collapse of the narrative freed them from expectations. Yet, the franchise they anchored remains remembered less for its storytelling than for the off-screen speculation about its stars. Their legacy is therefore twofold. On one hand, 50 Shades remains a cultural phenomenon, a trilogy that grossed over $1.3 billion worldwide, reshaping conversations about sex, censorship, and fandom in mainstream cinema. On the other, it stands as a cautionary tale about how Hollywood engineers intimacy to sell tickets. The very fact that fans continue to debate whether Jamie and Dakota were ever close speaks to the lingering impact of that strategy. This dual legacy mirrors broader industry shifts. Today, audiences are far quicker to question carefully polished friendships. The skepticism directed at other celebrity pairings, like the Don't Worry Darling press tour in 2022, where Florence Pugh and Olivia Wilde's visible tension overshadowed. The film itself reflects a heightened awareness. The Jamie Dakota example is often cited in online threads as a precursor, proof that audiences should not take press tour smiles at face value. Perhaps the most enduring impact is the way the saga blurred the line between art and artifice. Viewers adored the films for their escapist intimacy while simultaneously recognizing the distance between the actors. In that paradox lies the real legacy. Audiences are capable of holding two truths at once: that the story on screen can be captivating even if the people behind it are not what they seem. As time passes, the memory of Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson's supposed friendship will not fade entirely. It remains a lens through which to question every future claim of celebrity camaraderie. And it leaves us with one final unsettling question. In a culture built on performance, how can anyone ever know if a Hollywood friendship is real? In the end, the story of Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson is not about friendship gained or lost. It is about the stories Hollywood tells us and the ones we choose to believe. For 3 films, their connection was presented as unbreakable, a partnership that blurred the line between fiction and reality. But when the lights dimmed and the cameras stopped rolling, what remained was not closeness, but professionalism. So we leave you with this question. Do you believe Jamie and Dakota were ever truly friends, or were they simply colleagues carrying out a demanding script? Your thoughts matter, and we invite you to share them in the comments below. If you enjoyed this breakdown of Hollywood's hidden truths, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Secrets Behind the Fame. And remember to turn on the notifications bell, because the next untold story is just around the corner. Because in Hollywood, even friendship can be a script.